For our next session is Plenary 10, the Keynote Fireside, where we will learn more on how innovation cements resilience. Please welcome Aleksandra Drinic, the Northern Region Director, USAID Developing Sustainable Tourism in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Good morning and welcome to our Keynote Fireside chat. I'm deeply honored to welcome the Honourable Edmund Bartlett, Jamaican Minister of Tourism and co-chair of our summit partner, Global Travel and Tourism Resilience Council. In my career, I have witnessed firsthand the pride that people show when the piece of their traditional heritage becomes a part of tourism offering. I've also witnessed, and I'm still witnessing on a daily basis, the explosion of creativity that that happens when private sector steps up to drive tourism. His ideas, that's something that Minister Bartlett knows very well. His ideas, through his books and his policies, have driven an amazing recovery post-pandemic. Averaging 4.5 million tourists per year in Jamaica dropped to 1.5 million tourists per year, but has rebounded to more than 4.1 million in only 2 short years, which is quite amazing achievement and particularly important in an economy where 30% or even more of GDP is derived from tourism. An incredible achievement that has garnered world's respect with the minister, who's now been voted onto the Executive Council of World Tourism Organization, UN Tourism. Congratulations, Minister, on both accounts. With an impressive track record of more than four decades, Minister Bartlett has been at the forefront of sustainable tourism and resilience initiatives across the world. He has become a true champion for responsible tourism. Moreover, highlighting the need to strike a balance between positive effects on local economies and environments, his initiatives range from developing a global tourism fund for small nations hit by disasters to local community engagement in experiential product development. Furthermore, to strengthen the capacity of the tourism industry to endure disasters, Minister Bartlett has created the Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center in Jamaica, initiative that's been taking roots as we speak across the world. His leadership has brought about groundbreaking changes in Jamaica's tourism industry, and he is well known across the world for his knowledge of sustainable development and resilience of the tourism industry. We look forward to hearing only a small bit of the minister's wisdom and how his experience can benefit this part of the world. And in conversation with the Minister Bartlett is our very own Rajan Datar, a man who himself visited Jamaica several times and presented BBC TV programs about the island. I'm sure some of us at least had an opportunity to see at least some of more than 50 TV shows, TV travelogues produced by Mr. Datar over past 2 decades. Welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, I think huge applause is in order for Minister Bartlett and Mr. Datar. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Minister, great to see you on this side of the Atlantic again. Congratulations, by the way, on recent tourism figures to Jamaica. I think 2 million surpassed in the first 5 months, which is pretty good. Is it your first time in Bosnia and Herzegovina?
Well, firstly, thank you so much, Datar, for sharing this moment with me, and I want to initially say a big thank you to the Global Tourism Resilience Council and the Chemonics Group and USAID and the beautiful, wonderful people of the great country of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and particularly the beautiful city of Sarajevo. It's been my first, but it's really been an exciting and rewarding first. I am struck, firstly, by how green and absolutely beautiful this city of Sarajevo is. And coming from my part of the world in the West, where we have a lot more of what we call concrete jungles. It's wonderful to see greenery all around us, fresh, rich biodiversity, which excites us quite a bit. So yes, it's my first time, but it's an exciting first.
For those in the room who may not know much about your amazing work, can you explain the importance of resilience, the value of resilience in the world of tourism, and what your approach is?
Well, firstly, we know that tourism is perhaps the most significant industry since Anthropocene Earth. And it is so because of all the industries, tourism has been the only survivor since man. And in looking forward, it's the only one that will more than likely survive until the end of man. Because we are essentially a nomadic tribe. We move around. We move from one part of the world to the other to seek fortunes, to gain wealth, to appreciate differences, and more so to glory in similarities. And then we transfer wealth. And that's really what we do. And we transfer wealth through consumption. But in all of this movement, we are a kind of a contradiction in that we are perhaps the most resilient of all industries, but we're also the most vulnerable. And we're vulnerable to mega shocks and disruptions of all kinds. And my goodness, we've endured them. And we've had them. We've had what we are calling today black swans. In the last 50 years, for example, we've had 10 mega black swans, which have impacted tourism development and economic movement within states. But in all of the instances, and we could catalog them, you know, the latest, of course, being COVID-19, tourism has recovered. And we have recovered faster and enabled economic recovery quicker than any other activity on planet Earth. So, what is it that makes us resilient is at the heart of our discussions today, and certainly it is the heart of the considerations for a sustainable tourism in the future. And so, building then the capacity to, one, track disruptions, to recognize disruptions, to understand disruptions. Secondly, to mitigate against disruptions. Thirdly, to manage disruptions when they come, as they are inevitable. It's going to happen, it has been happening, and will continue to happen. So how do you manage these disruptions? And then, fourthly, to recover from disruptions, and to recover quickly. And then fifthly, to thrive. A nice new word they call now thrival. How do we do what we call recovery, survival, and then thrival? So the issue here is thrival. And that's really what perhaps today's discussion is truly about. How do we cement innovation and other powerful tools to enable not just survival, but thrival?
So when you see a country like Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is just at the beginning in a way of its journey into developing sustainable tourism, what's your advice in a sense? I mean, you just mentioned innovation, obviously resilience, but what do you assess? What do you see when you come here, and what do you think they should be doing without obviously patronizing them and saying, you know, telling them what to do?
Well, you know, interestingly, Rajan, is that Bosnia-Herzegovina, for example, represents what we call the emerging tourism destinations of the world. And it gives us a chance to do it right, to do it better than the more seasoned and mature destinations have done it. So the risk of not structuring, not organizing, and not building capacity to enable visitor movement and visitor facilitation in all its forms, and not building carrying capacity to enable the activities and actions of these visitors to not destroy and disrupt the economic and ecological stability and integrity of your area. To be able to develop policies, public policies, that enable us to have this movement and to critically convert the proceeds of the consumption patterns of the visitor into material wealth and prosperity for the people. So for new destinations like yours, we start out with human capital development. The people are the essence of your product. The most iconic attraction of any destination are the people. And tourism is about people. It's about people moving from one part of the world to experience people, to enjoy people, to glory in the similarities of the cultures of people, and to appreciate the differences. So diversification in all its forms is a huge part of recognizing the essence of tourism. So building human capital, training, certification, and enabling a workforce that operates within an ecosystem that is conducive to productivity and production. To have people appreciating and loving what they do, because service is at the heart of the business. 60% of the value of the experience of a visitor in a destination is service. And so our people here in Bosnia, as well as, of course, in the Caribbean where I'm from, have to glory in service. We have to appreciate that service is the greatest thing that you could do, but that service has an economic value. And that through high-touch service, high-quality service, service that's from the heart, you can then transmit to people a sense that makes them feel committed to return to you in social, economic, and other forms, in pecuniary forms, you know. And I say this, that sometimes we give bigger tips than we should because the service is better than we expected. And if that pecuniary consideration is a measure of our own internal feelings, then it makes the point that service is really what we're all about. So I start with that the first and most critical element of cementing resilience in Bosnia is about building the people, the human capacity.
So we had the issue, didn't we, after the pandemic, where a lot of people left the industry and we had to try and recruit them back again and make it attractive again for young people particularly. I think in this country there possibly is a similar thing where a lot of people don't really know much about tourism, don't think of it as a career yet. How do you make that difference? How do you, perhaps in this country, persuade people, yes, get into tourism? Right.
So I'm happy you raised that because it's one of the pain points that we've tried to smooth over since COVID. That tourism's flaw in all of it, the pain that we went is that we ignored and abandoned our people. They went into furlough, they were almost summarily dismissed. And we forgot about them. And guess what? When the recovery came, they forgot about us. And they forgot about us because they've learned how to survive without us. And they became involved in all sorts of technological and other engagements. They found new ways of surviving because that's what it is. Remember those two words? Survival and? What's the word? survival, and thrival. Yes. We just want to make sure we learn those two words today because it's at the heart of what tourism is about. So they managed to survive. And then the technologies came in, and suddenly virtualization and digitization and all these new technologies offer them an opportunity for earning. And then I want to make a simple little point here, which is vital, that 67% of the workers of tourism are women. And the industry is so involving, it's so absorbing, that it sometimes robs us of that sense of nurturing that has been so critical to women of our world. And do forgive me for saying it this way, ladies, but it happens to be true. That's how you're built. You're built for nurturing by and large. And you discovered during that COVID period that family was important. That children that you had were important. And that you were missing out something there. But you learned also that through virtualization, you could in fact be earning while nurturing. And so 144 million workers of the tourism industry, 67% of whom are women, did not come back after COVID. And so we created what the world has called now a supply chain disruption, a human capital disruption, as it were. And the hotels didn't have their staff. And the airplanes didn't have their pilots and their stewardesses. And suddenly, the world, emerging from COVID with what we call travel vengeance, discovered that there was less to be had and more pain, it seemed, in recovery. So that the impact of recovery became even more disruptive than COVID itself. And so we now have to re-look at ourselves and to reimagine the labor market arrangements in tourism. We are going to have to look at how do we enable an industry to emerge post-COVID with a greater regard for workers and to build an ecosystem around this which is conducive to supporting good work ethic and to enable higher levels of productivity and achievement. And we start out again with training. We start out with certification, and a third word called classification. And then a fourth word called remuneration. And so we train, we certify, we classify, and remunerate according to classification. And so we professionalize the industry. Yep. And we remove ourselves from the place where we're casual workers into now workers with the possibilities and potential for mobility and also portability. So we could peddle our wares wherever in the world we go as professionals, getting a return for our labor. And in Jamaica, if I'm allowed to say this, because it's very important, we went a little step further. Because during COVID, instead of abandoning our workers, we were training them virtually. And we trained 15,000 workers virtually. And we collaborated with the American Hotel and Lodging Institute, and they got their certification. And then the American Culinary Foundation, and they got their certification. So when we emerged from COVID, we were able to recover most of our staff. But more importantly, we were able to put them in a better position where their actual earning capacity improved because of training and certification. But then we did something else. We established the first ever global, tourism, 'cause tourism is global, pension plan. And this plan provided an opportunity for every category of worker within the tourism industry to be qualified. The government of Jamaica provided $1 billion Jamaican dollars to augment the fund. And in that process of augmenting the fund, we provided a special grouping of beneficiaries called the augmented worker. That is, a worker who is 59 years old at the point of entry and has only 5 to 6 more years before retirement to be able to get a pension equivalent to what it would be if he had started at age 18.
So in a sense, you're talking about giving dignity to the role, to the job, right? Pensions, training, certification.
And now housing and medical. So these are the key touch points of enabling the workers of the industry to feel like they are workers of the most sophisticated industries in the world. And that's how we're going to retain them, and that's how we're going to make sure that the sustainability of tourism is cemented.
Now, that obviously is crucial. The workforce is absolutely crucial. People are the heart of tourism, as you say. But when it comes to innovation, which I know you're very, very keen on as well, how do you kind of encourage innovation, and what kind of innovation are you looking at to help resilience?
Well, we begin with what I just said. That's innovation. Because the tourism industry has never thought of workers in this way. And the whole business of creating now a new labor market arrangement that will secure the professionalism of the industry and secure the dignity of the worker is at the heart of the innovation that this post-COVID period must, in fact, induce. But there are other things to do, because the workplace has changed and is changing. And tourism is perhaps the most responsive industry to the technological innovation and what we're calling the world, the era of knowledge has impacted tourism industry greater than most of the industries. And the impact of it overall is going to affect the workers of the industry too, because we have a high level of unskilled and semi-skilled workers within the tourism industry. And the technologies of today, what the Internet of Things are saying, and is to create an efficiency through machine intelligence that is going to eviscerate several categories and layers of workers in the tourism industry. So what is the innovation that's required how to deal with that? We're going to have to upskill and retrain workers of the industry and individuals. And we have to also start out at the very early stages, at primary schools, high schools, and of course into colleges, to understand the cognitive systems, to be able to manipulate the cognitive systems, and to be able to provide what we call added value at every step of the way. So the tourism industry now has to immerse itself into an appreciation of what the new technologies are and what they're going to mean in terms of the experiences that they're going to create in the industry.
So embrace change is what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
There is so much more I want to talk to you about. Rural tourism, the importance of storytelling, identity, air connectivity. But you are around, aren't you, for the rest of the day?
Surely, but just allow me to say one more thing that this whole innovation must drive us to. It must drive us to collaborating more. It must drive us to recognition that there can be more achieved together than individually. And in this part of the world, in the Baltic areas where there are a number of these emerging tourism economies, as I call them, size matters. And I can speak to that because I'm from an archipelago of little islands in the Caribbean where size matter, and with that brings economy of scale. So the economic convergence that must flow from competing, nice new word, rather than competing. And this has been the new call for us, to learn how to work together, to collaborate together, to share in multi-destination tourism so that the weaknesses of one can be supported by the strength of the other.
And that's interesting because that's definitely a big theme of this conference. I also appreciate that in the Caribbean, you have that cooperation, that collaboration going on. Now, I did promise questions from the audience, and I think there is one here from Ian Taylor. Can we give a mic to Ian Taylor? Just a quick question, please, Ian.
Yes, Ian.
Look, I'll make it quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I agree with almost everything Edward Bartlett said, Minister, but can I be devil's advocate and just challenge the idea that travel and tourism recover faster than any other activity from the pandemic? I think that's true of destinations, you know, more dependent upon travel and tourism. But if you think about the global economy, the inflation and the cost of living crisis that came through 2022 and 2023, and the labour shortage that came through 2022 and 2023 were products of the economy recovering before travel restrictions were fully lifted. And we're only seeing this year travel recover to the level of pre-pandemic. So one could deduce the opposite, actually, that COVID showed that the developed economies could survive without travel and tourism. And that's a conclusion that IATA has taken on board and so on. So very quickly, because there isn't time to go into in detail,
the question
I just
here,
wondered
yes.
how you would respond to that.
Right, but Ian, I think that it showed that they could survive, but they couldn't thrive. Because the recovery in a lot of these economies have been slow. And they've been slow because travel and tourism has not been able to move fast in their areas because they've closed their borders or they didn't open borders early enough. The countries where borders were open earlier thrived faster, recovered quicker, and are now growing. And I give an example of my own country. Jamaica, we opened our borders 3 months within COVID because of innovation and our own sense of building resilience. And we've not closed. The result is the first year after we opened our borders, which was June 2020, we welcomed 1 million visitors and earned $1.5 billion for the economy. The result of all of this is that to date, we have grown 15 consecutive quarters since COVID. And every year since COVID, our economy has expanded, and it has all been driven by tourism. So I agree, Ian, these larger countries where the borders kept closed had a longer period of recovery. And it makes the point that the countries that opened their borders early and had touristic activities were the countries that not only survive, but are today thriving.
Thank you, Minister. He will be around, the Minister, to, I think, to have conversations and to answer any other questions, because there are so many interesting things that he can talk to you about. So please, obviously, stick around. But can you give a huge round of applause for Minister Edmund Bartlett, please?